This special Folk Album of the Year award episode of Folk on Foot is devoted to showcasing the brilliant album Shimli by Cynefin, who is better known to us as Owen Shires, a regular on these podcasts because we walked with him on the River Cleta, and then he appeared in our Plygain Carols edition. But it's great, Owen, to have you here as one of the nominated albums of the year for Shimli. Congratulations.
Thanks very much. I'm still slightly in shock, if I'm honest.
There's a sort of manifesto for the album on your website, which I read, which says, and do you mind if I read it back to you? Because it is really powerful. A personal dispatch from the struggle to preserve a language, culture, and way of life. The album is a musical petition, a stake in the ground for the diverse and disappearing in our age of homogenization and mass amnesia. That's really powerful stuff. But that was your motivation for putting this collection of songs together, was it?
Yeah, I can't believe I wrote that. Did I write that? Yeah, I feel like I live in a part of the country where it doesn't get a lot of light of day, really, West Wales. Economically speaking, it's one of the poorest areas in Northern Europe, but culturally, it's incredibly rich. And I just wanted to give voice to that, really, and set it within a contemporary global context, which is we're living in this sort of age of mass homogenization and globalization and gentrification. And if you belong to a sort of minority culture or language, if you do nothing in the face of that, you will lose your culture and your language. So it's, that's the political side of it, really.
And the fight to preserve not just the language, but also the traditions and the agriculture, for example, and the way in which people relate to the land. That seems to be a backdrop too.
Yeah, well, the traditions and the way of life are the seedbed for the language. And so it's in those places of coming together that the language really is maintained and sort of renews.
Well, let's pick out some examples. Helmi is one of the tracks that I've chosen to focus on. And this is about agriculture, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So Helmi is the plural for Hilem. Hilem is a cornrick, as we might know them in English. And the backstory of this really is that I grow oats as a hobby. I'm a hobby farmer, really. I would ever say I'm a real farmer. I'm a hobby farmer. But
how many acres have you got?
I grew, how much did I grow this year? About half an acre. I got about 200 kilos. So I'll probably do an acre next year if I'm lucky. But I grow heritage oats, basically. That's my kind of niche area of interest, which has all come about as a result of being interested in sort of disappearing things, I guess, because people don't grow oats in Wales anymore. You can't buy Welsh oats anywhere in Wales. And as I do, I just like researching the things that I'm interested in or doing. And so I started coming across old poems and bits of, local history to do with oats growing and processing. And I came across this poem called Helmi by a local poet called Ivan Jones from Pren-gwyn. And he's describing these rows of Helmi, these cornricks in the fields surrounding the farmhouse. And they're like this silent army watching over the farmhouse, protecting the farmhouse from the scourge of winter. And literally, keeping the inhabitants alive over winter. And I'm being the romantic that I am. I just loved this image and sort of fell in love with it and decided to put it to music. So that's the sort of backstory with that.
Mae'n dod gan glwyf o'r gellydd a chleisio fel y mon a gadael creithiau eri o ar ystod sachar i'r gyrra'r bella ffin. Mae ôl y storm a pwll yw'r bydd ar wyneb criad cryf. Mae'n trwy eleni eto yn warchod dydd yn had. Ni yw'n wrth wylio'r bradyn gref i'r hadref dod i'r blaen. Os nad yw'r hen bron gael certh, nid wyf yn ofni'r brad. Mae gosgordd gref mewn lyfrau air yn gwarchod tyf yn had. O pebaint yn mynd ar wasgar, heb ei grawn yn afol bryd. Set miliwn rhag y gaeaf oer, a'i hyn gryfangau hi. Mae'n trwy eleni eto am gwarchod dydd yn had. Ni yw'n wrth wylio'r bradyn gref i'r hadref dod i'r ladd. Mae'n trwy eleni eto am gwarchod dydd yn had. Ni yw'n wrth wylio'r bradyn gref i'r hadref dod i'r ladd. O i'r hadref dod i'r ladd. O i'r hadref dod i'r ladd.
Just want to check on your grain growing skill, by the way. I mean, do you have problems with it? Because there must be a reason why it's no longer done widely in Wales. And I wondered if it was because the climate was tough on your oats.
No, it's the opposite, actually. What happened after the war, we had the Common Agricultural Policy, which started dictating what farmers were doing. You also had the introduction of silage and the appearance of the combine harvester. So it was the combination of those three things, really, which led to the disappearance of oats. And horses going was a big part of that, because the oats would go to feed horses mainly and people. And, supermarkets came in and imported food became a thing. And people sort of forgot quite quickly in the space of, I'd say, about 10, 20 years, that oats were a thing. And that's the main reason. But what's really fascinating about heritage grains is they're very genetically diverse and they're very well suited to the Welsh landscape. So the oats I grow are from, I actually got them from another folk singer, a guy called Iwan Evans, who's in his 80s now. He was the last person in Wales growing these Welsh black oats, and they grow really, really well here. They've been adapted over probably thousands of years to the Welsh climate, and so actually, I think they're the crops that we need moving forward into the future, because they are well adapted to the climate and the soils here. And I've had springs, 3 years ago was very, very dry, and they were fine. Come rain or shine, they seem to do well here.
And what do you do with them when you've grown them? Do you just have porridge for breakfast every day, or they're not those kind of oats?
You can eat them. Yeah, I have eaten them. The one of the problems now, because agriculture has become so mechanized and large scale, if you want to dehull oats now, there's only 2 processing plants in the whole of the UK. So the capacity to do it on a really small scale is gone. So back in the day, people would go to the local corn mill and and dehull them there, but those mills have gone now. And so I'm part of a group of growers who are trying to develop the technology as well to enable people to process oats on a small scale. So we've figured out the dehulling part, and the next part is how you preserve them longer term. So I do eat them. I can process a batch in the morning if I want to, but in terms of reintroduce them as something that you can package and buy in the shops, that's another step again. But that's the long-term vision anyway.
It sounds absolutely fascinating. And talking of processing plants, one of the songs on the album is about a defunct milk processing plant, I believe, and has the voice of somebody who used to work there embedded into the song. Tell us how that came into being.
I was invited to do some music for a film that was being made about this place called Portllalia, which is near Tregaron in Ceredigion. And as part of this, I was doing research and met a chap called Lloyd Jones, who is also a musician and used to sing and gave me some songs as well. And this is one of the poems he gave me, but he was a worker at this milk factory, and they used to process about half the milk in the county up until about the 1960s when it closed. And some of that milk would go straight down on the train to London. There was a train stop there. But it wasn't just a company, it was a community, and lots of sort of rural companies in that period had a real sense of togetherness and community, and they had a football team, and they had a canteen, and they had all these sort of extra things which were not really, which you wouldn't consider part of a company these days. And it really was a focal point for the community, as well as obviously providing jobs and employment for people. And they had an in-house bard, a chap called Phil Rowlands, 2 in-house bards. And so the song is the words of Phil Rowlands, the in-house bard who was there, talking about the closure of the factory. And the poem was written at a point where they weren't sure if it was going to close or not, basically. And Lloyd, I mean, he's 93 now, I think. Some amazing memories from him, and how the area has changed, and how, again, agriculture has changed from back then. You could have 20 cows and make some income from milking them, whereas now you need 500 cows or 300 cows. So the margins have just changed completely. So yeah, a really amazing chap and a great source of local knowledge and history.
Dwi'n gweud bobl yn sylweddoli heddi cyfraniad y ffatri ladd I Geredigion ac I bobl Ceredigion. Oedd o'r gymdeithas yn benni hunan yn y ffatri fel. Ond lot o sawl doen yn rhy bardd eitha da na, bardd cyfen gwlad yn dweud. Ar hynny oedd yn neud y brydleithio un o'n gwybod. So rwy'n yn ymddeol yn gwybod I hanes y hwyl I gyd yn dweud. A o'n i'n meddwl, roi o tiliodd ni dim dan o nawr, dim neb I gael I roi iddyn nhw. Chwy'n dweud, tiliodd ni gael.
Farwel fy hoff gydweithwyr, mae'r chwalfa fawr gerllaw. Rhai yn aros yma, a'r lleill yn symud draw. Hapus ffyr cydweithio, trwy a blynyddoedd maith. Bob gorchwyl megis canu, a neb a'i rydd yn llaeth. Bwy sy'n cofio cwmni Ponllanio nawr. Ar lan y tefi lonydd ger stesiwn Jack JP, atgofion bydd yn aros am gam yr hapus li am lawer haf hir felyn a'r hael ei wres mor boeth y labels coch a'r tyrnau a'r merched degur i coeth pwy sy'n cofio cwmni pont llanio nawr peidiwch anghofio cwmni pont llanio nawr neu hen neu afai rhewllyd a phawb fel on his guard rhag sgyd neu sleidio'n sydyn a chwimpo ar yr iard am fell a glaw a thyrfen dros wain a bryn a rhos neu'r eira mawr un flwyddyn wnaeth yr rai i aros nos wnaeth yr rai i aros nos Farwel Rhys John a Morgan Wel reis yn bechgyn ffein a gariodd nôl y cyfri feli yn ai o Woodbine Farwel y cwmni diddan a'r ddifur rowns y nos bob un ai wyd neu stori a neb yn tanu'n gros ni hwn pa beth bydd hanes bont llanio cymbo hir mae straeon mawr ar gerdded ond ydyn nhw yn wir beth wedodd rhywun wrthydd ond methaf coelio'n lan a toer yr hifenfa cyn hir yn ffatri lan cyn hir yn ffatri lan cyn hir yn ffatri lan
And what is the place like now?
It's just a derelict building. I recorded some of the soundtrack to the film in the building because it had quite hard sort of tiled walls. I probably shouldn't have been in there on health and safety reasons, but you know, it's never stopped me in the past. Yeah, it's just a derelict factory now, just sort of, you know, decaying into the ground, which is quite sad really. But if you look at the old photos of it, it's just amazing to think that that place existed and just the area that they collected milk from was just vast, you know, half a county.
And another, this sense of community comes back in a number of the songs, I think. The song Fishing, which is about an ancient fishing technique, is something that was embedded into a community, and its loss is keenly felt.
Yeah, so I think it was just before the pandemic, I had an invitation to go to a group of fishermen in St Dogmels to perform. And these are fishermen who used a very old technique called Cynefin, which began life on the River Seine in France, near Paris, it goes through Paris. And they brought it over with them, the Tyrian monks, when they came. I think it was would have been during the Norman Conquest or after the Norman Conquest in the 12th century, I think. And they settled in St Dogmels. And it's a technique where you string a net between two boats or two coracles and you catch the salmon as they come upstream. And this technique went on for 900 years until 2018, until it was deemed that there weren't enough fish in the river to carry on the practice. And so,
what kind of fish were they catching?
Mainly salmon, Atlantic salmon, probably some surin as well. Salmon numbers are so low now on the River Tavy that they just said they couldn't carry on anymore. And so they wanted a way of sort of marking this, I think, and really sort of paying homage to the tradition. And so I was asked to actually research to see if there was any sort of poems or songs to do with this fishing tradition. And I came across this song, Biscotta, which is from Cardigan. And talks about how plentiful the river was back in the day, and how abundant it was. So an interesting contrast to the situation today.
Rwy'n maned I bysgota yn yr haf, yn yr haf. Fe addi canta yn yr haf. Fallai afon holi, glannau gwyrddio'n tywi, crigau cedir yn coffi, a hefyd afon teifi yn yr haf, yn yr haf. Llandysil yr haf wedyn yn yr haf, yn yr haf. I ddal pysgodyn yn yr haf. Mae rai yn erfyn, yng Nghastell Newydd Emlyn, cael bara ceir chymenyn. A feint o enwyn yn yr haf, yn yr haf. Aberteifi'n hanod yn yr haf, yn yr haf. I ddal llyswenod yn yr haf. Be sy'n hanod, rwy meddwl a cael gwybod, chwilio llawer diwrnod. A bli llyswenod yn yr haf, yn yr haf. Ysmethu na fodala yn yr haf, yn yr haf. Pysgota yn yr haf. Wa fi baned, i'r blaglau yn Llambed, dyna lle cafweled. Rhyw o ferched, blodau'r haf, blodau'r haf. Os cafle cysurus yn yr haf, yn yr haf. Treiliaf am ddo ddeudis yn yr haf. Fanaf gwysion lebre, pedwar o ceffale, yn llusgo hwyr y bore. Drwy'r holl leolydd yn yr haf, yn yr haf. Trwy'r holl leolydd gorau yn yr haf, yn yr haf. Maned I pysgota. Maned I pysgota. Maned I pysgota. Maned I pysgota. O, maned I pysgota. Rwy'n maned I pysgota.
And again, Owen, the loss of species is a theme in the album, because you've got a song about lapwings and the sadness you feel about the way in which their population is dropping.
Yeah, so another sort of emblematic sign of what's going on in terms of biodiversity, the lapwing, and through talking to farmers about the wildlife changes that came along with the changes in agricultural practices. So the introduction of silage really was one of the big things that has really spelled disaster for lapwings, because it's really changed their habitats, some of the natural sort of ground nesting habitats, and they cut the silage mechanically, sometimes 3 times a year now, not just once a year by hand or with a reaper binder. And there's an enclosure down the bottom of the valley here, and it's here, and there's a lapwing enclosure there. So I've been going down with my friend Ben, who's an ornithologist, and going and checking them out in March or April time, and I just fell in love with the way they do this amazing sort of aerial acrobatic display where they fly really high, and they turn, and you think they're going to hit the ground, and then they change at the last minute and they change direction. So the song was inspired by my visits to the nature reserve, and also by a poem which was written by one of our folk poets, Dick Jones, maybe 30 years ago. Sort of really, he'd realized what was going on, 30 years ago, before they, they've been plummeting for 50 years or more now in terms of numbers, and he sort of acknowledged that in his poem. But I couldn't quite adapt the poem to sing, because not all poetry can be sung, let's just say. And so I wrote my own words based on the visits there and the poem.
And it allows you obviously to show off your whistling skills.
It's never intentional. It just sort of happened. But yeah, I come from a family of whistlers. What can I say?
Oh, really? Well, did everyone in the family whistle?
My granddad could whistle in like 2 notes at the same time, apparently. But my dad whistles as well, so it's like it's just in the family. But people always comment on that and sort of say, "Oh, you don't hear people whistling anymore. Whistling is becoming a dying art, and the postman used to whistle, and the butcher used to whistle, and nobody whistles anymore." I sort of never really thought about it, but yeah, it's it's fun.
Ar y malan yn sir yn sisial sŵn a gwynt, mi glywais lais y corn y cyll yn mynydd ar ei hynt. Can arwy brendilys clir nawr ac yn y man, fel yna'n ddigon syml daeth im swynnog yr y glân. Yna fydd aeth haid o'r nef yn gweipio ti ar lli, a rywsut ton o heddwch daeth yn dawel drwsta i. Adar nwyfes adar cain a dyn twy bob un, yn troelli uwch y dreithall noeth fel dwy fôl a wirlu. O dacw nhw a adain chwym yn glanio gyda stŵr, fel criw o hen fensiynwyr ffraith yn glebran wrth y dŵr. Ac eto'n niddio eto'n hel, y dyfroedd gwastad maith, gweitha'r giaf garw oer a malyd ar ei taith. Dyna nhw hen hynod li heb un yn dangos Sion, a gwelsant gysgod canydd nawr ar hyd y dirwedd long. O amba hyd y gwelwn ni ei heriad bywiog hyd, yn hebrwng trwy y hirlon moer cenhadon gwyn ei byd. Bain a sôn mae byr bydd tro, llif at gallach yw o corn ac ill na swn ein gwewyr chwith.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the musical textures that you've got on the album because, you know, it's a very gentle listen. It's a very contemplative listen, I think you might say. But there's some lovely layered textures, particularly on a song called "The Heavens Are Greening." Would you tell me what that is in Welsh?
Yes, so that song, the Welsh title is Mae'r Nen yn ei glesni, which means something like the heavens are greening. It's a May carol. So I know there are May carols that exist in, you know, other parts of the UK. But I think that people often don't realise that when people think of carols, they think of Christmas normally. And I think it's nice to be able to remind people that we have carols that are sung at specific times of the year, you know, and other times of the year. And so it's a poem by a chap called Jacob Davis, who was a preacher and a sort of entertainer and a poet who lived in the southern part of Ceredigion. And it's a really sort of vibrant celebration of spring. It's, you know, talking about everything's budding and bursting into life, and there's a fair breeze, you know, coming through the window and rousing us from our sleep. And the original, the metre itself, actually, traditionally when it's sung, it's in a metre called Tri Thrawiad, which can be a bit ploddy. And I thought this didn't really match the sentiment of the song. So I thought I'll do something different with this arrangement and I'll do something more lively. So I sped it up quite a bit. Yeah, there was some different textures on there. The horns, I felt, brought that sort of vibrancy as well.
This is the McKintleth Wind Band, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're in the intro as well. So what I wanted was what I thought was a kind of village hall vibe with a wind band practicing away. Because there's something, I think when I think of this poem, I often think of a village in spring, because people used to go around house to house and sing May carols to rouse people, and so it has that village vibe to it. And I wanted to sort of have that sort of informal village thing to it, but then this sort of real sort of oomph that kicks in when the band kicks in.
Mae'r nen yn ei glesni a'r blodau mewn ffresni, a'r hael sydd yn codi yn heini ddydd ha. Byneger fy nghalon ei diolch yn gyson, am swynion carolon, carolaf, carolaf. Mae'r adar yn canu a'r bore yn llamu, a'r awel yn mynnu yn tynnu o'r tŷ. Daw'r ceiliog a'i ganiad, daw'r wawr a'i gwahoddiad, a'i chodiad daw galwad o'r gwely, o'r gwely. Daw brysur dyfrynoedd y lleiniau a'r llanoedd, hael ar fanaddoedd a ffriddoedd a ffwst, bod pan fydd yn olau, iachus a minnau, poenau'n anodau a A'r nawddydd ceir helo y morwedd a morio, a'r oelan yn gwyno wrth hwylio yn hael. Mwyniant i minna i'w aros am oriau, a rannau mawr erwain o'r araith. dyddiau a ddoreth dy ffrwythau hyfryd ar oglau a dwyni ar dôl a'r wely o flagur goffwysaf o'n llafur i'ch dolir cysgadur cysgodol daw grisir dy ffrynoedd y lleiniau a'r llannoedd hael ar fenyddoedd a ffridoedd a ffrwst bob man fydd yn olau iachus a minnau y poenau'n anodau a nwyddost a nwyddost a nwyddost Mae'r men fan ei glesni 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 fan ei glesni fan ei glesni
I suppose some people might say that you're somewhat nostalgic for some of these things. Is that a fair thing? Because sometimes nostalgia is seen as a criticism, but it feels as though you are, you are not just keen to look back on these things, but in a way keen to make sure that they stay alive for the future, which is different from nostalgia, isn't it?
Yeah, there's an aspect to nostalgia which can maybe be a bit over sentimental perhaps, and maybe not able to recognize the world we live in now, and I'm very keen that I guess you could say I have one foot in the past and one foot in the now. I try to anyway. But I do think we are living in an era of such unprecedented and rapid change that if we don't keep one eye to the past, we will lose who we are completely. The pace of change now is so unprecedented, and I think there's lots of symptoms of that. And so, yes, you could say it's sort of nostalgic, but I think it's important because I think so many of these stories actually can give us clues as to ways of life which actually have worked over in terms of being sustainable and cultivating wellness in us. And we're looking for answers, and often the answers are there or were in the more not so recent past. So that's where I'm coming from, rather than wasn't everything better back in 100 years ago, because obviously 100 years ago you didn't have healthcare, you didn't have you might have died quite young. It's there's lots of things which are great about the modern age, but yeah, it's that balance, I think.
And I do feel that particularly younger people are reaching back for some of these traditions and reaching back to some of this traditional music and poetry as an antidote to the pace of change and an antidote to the always on digital world. Have you encountered that?
Yeah, I think it's becoming, there's a real interest, and I think really what it gives you is a sense of place as well. Because I think that's the other thing I would say about the modern age is Martin Shaw has this great term, scatterlings. We're so scattered now, and people really want a sense of place and a sense of rootedness. And these stories and these sort of practices or traditions can really root you in a place. And I think you're right. I think there's some kind of antidote in the slowness of making art or making music or making poetry, which demands of you that you really switch off from that fast pace, because if you don't, you don't make good art, I don't think.
And there's always time for a gathering for some beer, isn't there? And here's a tradition that you celebrate on the album, which definitely I'm sure a lot of people would applaud. But tell us about this tradition of small beer.
Yeah, well, that's a good sort of follow on from the previous question, I think, because before the NHS, your insurance was your community, essentially. You know, if you had an accident or you fell on hard times or you were ill, there was no insurance, there was no state welfare, there was no sort of intervention from the powers that be. You were kind of on your own, and people very often were destitute. But there were traditions and practices in rural parts of Wales of people coming together to support people who were really in need. And one of the ways by which they did that was to have what was called a cwrw bach, which translates to little beer. But it was essentially, someone would make a home brew, and they'd invite everyone round, and the money for the home brew would go towards the person in need. And so the song itself is quite old. It's about 200 years old. It's an invitation to one of these gatherings, and it's sort of it's an interesting poem. It's quite ahead of its time in the way that it sort of it this is way before Jung. It's like splitting the psyche into sort of Mr. Generous and Mr. Greedy, and all these aspects of self that are kind of, you know, fighting with each other for dominance. And he's sort of saying, you might be feeling Mr. Greedy today, but please err on the side of, you know, benevolence and generosity, and come to the little beer and give generously. You know, so it's a really interesting poem.
And it's a joy to talk to you as always, but I think this is a great note on which to end our conversation. Can I just say again, congratulations on making one of the folk albums of the year.
Thanks very much. No, it's nice to, you know, have it appreciated and sort of reflected back, and yeah, it's been really nice having people's just see how it's moved people. I think that's just, you never know the effect that your music's going to have, and so that's one of the kind of nice things about releasing them, is that you get to see it mirrored back to you, really.
A manercher y dwyf bob un yn gariadus, anoedd bydd fy madrof, rwy'n eithaf anfedrus. Bydd Mr. Angen yn saethu'r ei geiriau, ac falle'r sy'r hunan yn gloi ar fy nghenau. Bi angen a hunain, ma'n brwydyr ysbrydol, ei saith ai milenig, yn eithaf gylynol. Clwyfyr sy'r hunain, gan sardi gwylithra, a gan a fe benwyd sy'r angen yn fyna. Ddi'r hael ar Elisenggar. Ddi'r hael ar Elisenggar. Yn ar yma angen, a gofid un blino, ni chafor lan y ddwch, yng nghwsgnac yn effro, ac efen yn oethlwn, a'r trad trwy'r ysgidiau, o ma'n eitha fel bilys I ateb y biliau. I ofyn yn gymor, mewn gofid ac angen, fyddai di gweld tra, yn oethlo medalcyn, o'r cyngor a gyfais, rhag angen a gofyd, oedd I mynd o ddi amgylchu wahodd yn diwyd. Ddi'r hael ar Elisenggar. Ddi'r hael ar Elisenggar. rhai sydd yn medru rhoi parchag I fydd dod I Mr Heilioni a chofio'r wedi ddon rwy warant i'w galw ddefnydd pitches o rybcag napkin a chwrw I'r hael